Power up. Welcome to Energypreneurs, where I bring to you the exciting new opportunities in solar power, battery, and electric cars. I'm your host, Sohel Hasni. I have been tracking and analyzing these technologies on LinkedIn and Twitter for more than 10 years. Now we meet on podcast. What you like to be called as, Jacqueline or Jackie? I saw many people calling you.
Either. You can use both. Okay. Whatever you're more comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jacqueline. So maybe we start with some introduction. What you do? I just did a quick Google. You have been everywhere. You traveled, entrepreneur. I didn't realize you lived in Philippines, founded something in the Philippines. So
yes. Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, indeed, I have traveled quite a lot. I grew up very internationally. My dad was an engineer at Shell, so we grew up in many different countries, especially Australia and later also in Syria. And then during high school and university, I lived in a couple other places like Peru and Norway. So ultimately for me that made the decision to go to the Philippines quite a bit easier. But I started my career actually as a student. I started my first company or startup, and that company, the Kleine Consultant, it's still very much alive and kicking after 13 years. So now we have an office in every student town of the Netherlands and in London and in Stockholm. So it was my first encounter with entrepreneurship. And then I actually started my first real job in private equity. So I was working as an associate for a large fund, 12 billion euros, so times 50, 600 billion pesos. And my job there as an investment associate was pretty much to buy companies and to do majority stake investments in all kinds of mature businesses. So we had a lot of investments in retail, in media, also in engineering. A couple of the largest dredging companies of the Netherlands are part of that group. And after 4 years, I really wanted to go back to entrepreneurship. And so I started I started sharing that dream with other people. And then somebody connected me to Rocket Internet. Rocket Internet is behind a lot of successful companies in Asia, such as Lazada and Zalora. And they said to me, so they said to me, like, would you like to go to the Philippines and start a company for us? And I thought, well, why not? I didn't really know anything about the Philippines. I actually had to Google it, where it is exactly on the map. But I was quite interested to learn more about Southeast Asia. And having grown up all around the world, it wasn't, for me, a life-changing thing to move to the other side of the world. And so I ended up within a month of quitting my job. I was in Manila in November 2013. And that's when I started La Moody. So I brought 2 interns with me, and we started from scratch, started working from the Lazada office on building online real estate marketplace. And it turned out to be a massive adventure. It also went rather well. So within 3 years, we built a team of 100 people. And I think still, hopefully, the leading online real estate marketplace in the Philippines, though I'm not so much in touch anymore. And after that, I spent a few years at True Money, which is a large fintech company backed by CP Group from Thailand and Ant Financial. We competed a bit with Cebuana, Willier, ML Willier on cash-to-cash remittances. And after that, I took on a role as a partner in a venture capital firm in the Netherlands. And I did that for 2 years, but I decided that I was much less in love with the investing job than building companies. That's, I think, what I do best. So I just started my new company, which is a climate investing platform. So,
Wow, a lot of investment and starting from scratch. Now, the world needs people like you. So what are you doing on the climate investment space?
On the climate investing space, we want to provide access to retail investors to private market investments. And private market investments are asset classes such as venture capital and private equity. We believe that, first of all, to climate change requires massive investments, and that is investments in innovation, building technology that can help create a net zero future, and that
Mhm.
can be. We need to find ways to install 10x the amount of renewable energy, but then
Mhm.
we also need to be able to save energy at, at grid scale. We need to be able to store energy somehow in batteries that don't exist today.
Mhm.
We need to find ways to eat in a different way, so we eat less beef whilst the demand for beef consumption is growing. We need to come up with alternatives so that we start to eat less beef instead of more. So there is a whole lot of technological invention that needs to happen, and at the same time, mature companies need to decarbonize their business model and their technology. So that's why we think venture capital and private equity have a massive role to play in transitioning towards a net zero world. Venture
Mhm.
capital, obviously, by financing new technology, and secondly, private equity by transitioning the old economy towards a net zero model. Now, so a lot of cash or capital is required within venture capital and private equity to make that happen. But at the
Mhm.
same time, there is a massive economic opportunity. There's a huge value creation opportunity. But the problem is that private investors, and most normal investors, have no access to venture capital or private equity, because the hurdles to join a fund are typically around €1 million, so say 50 million pesos, or in a lot of European funds, 250 million pesos. So we're building a technology platform with a license which allows you to invest in venture capital or private equity pretty much the way that you would invest in the stock market. So with much smaller amounts, you can invest in the top climate venture capital and top private equity funds. As a result, we unlock the capital base that is sitting with private investors, whilst also allowing more people, more individuals to share in the financial upside of climate investing. That's the current thing that we're working on.
So you are basically doing, in a way, uh, crowdfunding for climate investment, but in a larger way or in a structured way, because this is something we want to do as an innovation fund at ADB or 5 years
Yes.
ago, right? Saying there's so many people out there who want to invest, but they
Yes.
may be small retailer, but they also don't know how to get there. So to connect
Yes.
the supply and demand side.
Exactly, that's right. And one nuance there, because when you think of crowd equity funding, typically what you think of is investing directly into the startup.
Mhm.
Say,
Mhm.
for example, if I'm a retail investor and I have, I don't know, 1 million pesos to spend, what can I do? Well, I can invest in the public markets and stock market. But I cannot invest in a venture capital fund, but I can invest in a crowd equity platform directly in a startup. The major disadvantage of doing so is that it's super risky, because
Right.
any startup has like a 6% survival chance coming out of the origination stage. So as a private investor, you take on a whole lot of risk, and that risk is much less if you can invest in a fund instead of in a single investment, because then you spread the risk across, say, 20 different companies, and so the
Mhm.
chances of you making a decent return without losing your money are 10x better.
Yeah.
Invest directly in a company. Yeah. So
So you distribute the risk. You're working on the covariance of uh,
exactly
risk,
that.
right? Not the
Exactly that.
direct risk. Oh, fantastic. So how do you raise this fund? You have a retail base. I mean, you have networks that who are investing in, and then also on the other side, you are investing into actively into different ideas and ventures, right?
So what we do is, there are two sides to our business. One is to indeed raise capital from all our customers.
Mhm.
Currently in Europe, you can invest in carbon equity from €10,000 and up. So that's from 500K
Mhm.
pesos and up. And we, on the other hand, build financial products. And the first financial product that we're building is a climate venture capital fund of funds. And what that means is we select the top 10 climate VC funds of Europe. And these
Mhm.
are funds which will be anywhere between 50 to 500 million euros in size. We take
Mhm.
a ticket, we take an allocation in that fund of, say, 1 to 5 million. And then we distribute that 5 million. We allow our small investors to participate, and we aggregate their small investment into that ticket. So on the one hand, we're building financial products, and we start with climate venture capital, but we'll also do climate private equity, maybe real assets, maybe private debt. So any sort of alternative climate investments. And on the other hand, we're building our base of small investors or customers. And we do that actually in 3 ways. One is just direct outreach, but another one is to become the thought leader in terms of alternative climate investing in Europe, so that we build, we get a lot of inbound flow of people who learn about us through word of mouth. And a third is partnerships with private banks who all have customers who have a significant net worth and who are looking for climate investing products. They are, for us, an interesting distribution channel.
Yeah, so much money looking for those projects. So you're in the right place. I think we also have a venture fund. ADB has a venture fund. I'm discussing our fund product manager on a podcast next week. So I'll find out very detailed more. Yeah. Okay, this is fantastic. Now, are you also taking these projects as a portfolio and getting some co-financing from GCFs of the world, Green Climate Fund and others?
We will. So currently we take an allocation in a venture capital fund. Our investor base also has a possibility to co-invest on specific investments. But we might raise funding from, for example, the European Investment Bank, who also supports new venture capital funds. So they work as an accelerator. I don't know if ADB does that, but for example, in Europe, you have either local government funds. So the Netherlands has a fund, and the European Union does a lot of co-investing. So they act as a cornerstone investor, which helps accelerate the fund, which is, that's great that they do that.
Yeah, that's what I meant, that if you go to the Green Climate Fund of the world, which is based in Korea, Seoul, and if you, in your portfolio, if you say, okay, these 20 projects, it's really not fully viable, there's a funding gap, and then those climate funds can come in and give a grant to make those gap based on whatever carbon abatement they're doing. Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, very good. So what's your vision to sort of, you just started this one, or you said you already been in this few years?
No, we just started. So we just started last January. And I think the vision, what we want to achieve is 2 things. One, we want to move capital to climate change by the billions. We really want to really have impact at scale by being able to move large. We're going to unlock the entire capital base sitting with private investors who are now excluded from private market investing. There are trillions of capital that we could invest in climate change. So that's one of our ambitions. And the other one is for as many people as possible to be able to benefit from the economic upside, from the value creation opportunity in climate investing, because we believe that when people have the opportunity to invest, they also become invested in. It becomes part of their identity. It's something that they can be proud of. And when we talk about climate change, I think we often talk about doing less. We should travel less, we should fly less, we should eat less, we should consume less energy. And we also talk a lot about anxiety. It's kind of scary to think about what will happen as the world warms. And I think, investing in technology that creates a net zero future is super interesting and empowering. It's a positive message. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can invest, but also benefit. And so you're growing your own wealth as well as the health of the planet. And so we want to be able to offer that double-edged sword and ultimately have as many people as possible. If ultimately we can bring it down to say 50 pesos that you can co-invest with us, then we can have the biggest possible reach. And that's not near term, but in the long term, I would like for everybody to own a bit of carbon equity, because it will help them advance on the economic ladder in their own lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, you will get a lot of money from the corporate social responsibility side of it. Some of those money always look for project, and it's a very high transaction cost often to find. So if you have a portfolio of project, people can cherry pick saying, I'll give you $10 million, just invest into these 20 projects, and they take a little bit of risk, not the full risk of a single project.
Exactly. That's exactly the value proposition. Yeah. So you minimize your risk because you get to diversify, and thematically you can choose. You can say, well, I'm interested in alternative proteins, or I'm interested in mobility. And based on that, you can select the funds that, fit with your appetite.
Oh, fantastic. So are you doing very specific to, you just mentioned mobility. Are you doing anything on electric vehicle specifically?
Yes.
You just started, yes.
Yeah. No, exactly. So we're talking to funds that have quite some EV exposure. So that there are different angles to it. So some funds are working on it from a battery point of view. So for example, nano coatings is a technology that we see quite a lot. Others have more direct investments in, say, micromobility kind of startups, which would also fall within the EV revolution. But it can also be planning software that helps you minimize time in traffic, or helps optimize routes. So there are quite a couple of different sort of technologies that fit within the EV theme.
Fantastic, because I get so many of these requests. People come, and I can send you a lot of people your way saying, oh, I have these small startup ideas. Do you know someone who can finance? Of course, our private sector, putting my corporate hat on, we cannot do everything, right? But there are a lot of things that we don't. But yeah, there are a lot of people come in looking for money, and also people, I know a lot of people who have money, don't know where to invest, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in the right place. Fantastic.
I hope so. Yeah. So we won't be available in Asia for a while. We'll first be Europe, but in the long run, also Asia. I think Asia is a super interesting market because, the challenges in Asia are even bigger than in Europe. I think I was really inspired to. Philippines inspired me to go in the direction of climate investing. If you see how challenged a city like Manila is, where the city is entirely gridlocked with traffic, it's impossible to travel from Manila, as we all know. The vast majority of the country is still poor and has no capital yet for travel, for air conditioning, etc. But you also see that the moment that people move up the economic ladder, that becomes their first priority. Everybody wants to fly. People start to eat more meat. Everybody wants an air conditioning. And so the demand, the appetite for things that will expand our carbon footprint is huge. And so the challenge, the innovation challenge to let people have all of that, but whilst not further overburdening the planet, is huge. And there is still so much to do.
Yeah, so much. You said you were in Manila 2013.
Yes.
You heard about the project, e-trike project in the Philippines?
No, I haven't. No, it was an e-tricycle project.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay. So you were not in at that time, electric tricycle, electric jeepney, a lot of noise was made. You were not here.
I heard a bit about it, but it never materialized. There were and I heard there were some political forces involved there that
I don't know what you have heard. I was actually behind the project. It was my project. So I did a pilot in Mandaluyong in 2011.
Interesting.
I think I was ahead of time. Because 2011, that was not even Tesla properly got all the media coverage. So 2012, we put together the very ambitious plan, 100,000 tricycle to convert. I managed to raise $500 million for it.
Wow.
But many things happened, but it stopped after 3,000 units. They stopped, they didn't go. And we did get a very cheap loan, about $100 million from Clean Technology Fund. But at a very cheap rate, like a 45
Yeah.
years to pay 0.15% rate,
Wow.
10 years
Wow.
grace, the climate funds. But then now, despite all that, I went to Boracay, which you must have
Yes,
been when you're in
yes,
Manila.
of course.
Boracay
Yes.
is now 100% electric tricycle. There's no gasoline tricycle
Amazing.
anymore.
Nice. Yeah. No, it can happen. It can happen. And we're getting to the point where it becomes economical. But it's a matter, there are several major challenges. One is infrastructure. So having sort of like, the charging infrastructure all across Manila, that would be a major, major, major challenge. And secondly, I think more so in the Philippines and in Europe, vested interests. There are all kinds of political interests.
That's the problem. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there are very big political hurdles to change things, and I think that goes for energy as well. I mean, unfortunately, Philippines is very characterized by monopolies and
I mean,
oligopolies. Yeah.
yes, I mean, no, nothing specific in the Philippines. In general, when you do a project, especially public sector, and you go make a big noise, oh, it will save you $100 million worth of oil, this and that. So someone is selling the oil saying, oh my God,
Yes.
I'm going to lose that much money, right? So,
Yes.
so of
Yes.
course, there's a
Yeah,
flip
there are
side of it.
forces that are not purely economic, or I mean, there are forces to deal with to get things done in the Philippines, which
Yeah,
will make
that's
it more.
why globally the fossil fuel industry who killed the electric vehicle once this time around could
Yes.
not. So I think
That's
the
interesting.
momentum is up.
The fossil fuel lobby has also created this sort of mindset. They have clearly propagated that there is a trade-off between impact and financial return. And if you look at the previous generation, that has always been the discussion that either you invest in impact or you invest in something that generates financial return. But that is that's a myth which has been propagated by the financial lobby, by the fossil fuel lobby, because it can be both. And that's actually the core thing that we want to prove, that investing in companies that are good for the climate are also the best investment opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, now you don't need to tell. I think even the hardcore fossil fuel investors figured that out, that they are up to
Yeah.
this serious stranded asset risk. I have clients in Central
Yes.
Asia, 100% gas countries. Even 5 years ago, we could not say anything against gas. Today, they are discussing. I'm actually preparing a project, a concentrated solar power embedded in a gas power station. Now the government realizes, yes, Stone Age did not come to an end because they ran out of stone, right? That message has sinked in quite correctly now. And then people like you, I think, also showing them the path out, no?
Yes, yeah, and it's happening quite quickly. I think there was a massive mindset shift in the past 2-3 years, maybe perhaps aided by COVID. I think COVID also shows us a little bit what devastation looks like. What does it? What happened? Like such massive, major economic change, and sort of. It can happen overnight, and that's the same with climate change. Climate change can hit certain tipping points, which cause disasters at a global scale. Which I think COVID is a little demo of what that might look like.
Yeah. I mean, COVID showed us, with all the mights we have, how helpless you can be.
Yes.
Against something that happened, you can't do much, right?
Exactly.
The climate is like that. Doesn't matter how mighty you are, your might is nothing against nature.
And predictions are that by 2050, the amount of casualties from global warming, so from overheating and natural disasters, will be 10 times as high as all COVID casualties in the past 12 months. And that's something to think about.
Yeah, it's quite scary, but that's true. So what's your vision in general? Just coming back to the power industry, because the battery is going to dramatically change the fundamental assumption of the power sector, because supply demand don't need to be matched anymore at the same time, right? Like your TV, fridge, all can have batteries. And before you could not generate electricity, now you can. So that will fundamentally change Do you have any vision how it might, and what opportunities might it create?
Well, before there are opportunities, there will be a lot of challenges, because battery storage is good, and the cost of battery storage, cost of storage are falling. At the same time, the level of battery innovation that we still need to really be able to go fully renewable is still very far off, because the more renewable energy we have, the more intermittency, the higher the intermittency risk. And so you need batteries to store energy to fix the intermittency problem, but we cannot store energy for that long. I think no, I'm not saying this right. In Bill Gates' book, have you read Bill Gates' last book?
No.
It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. It's on how to avoid a climate disaster, I think. And he talks very extensively about the different technologies that can save us, and how we might store energy at an extent that, say, if you have a mid-sized city and there's no wind and we don't have any sun for a couple of days, then you would need massive amounts of space for batteries, and the cost of having batteries to store energy to the point that we could actually supply energy to that city for the while that there is no renewable energy is crazy. So ultimately you will need an energy mix, and so we will need renewable energy. In the short term, we will probably still need gas plants for intermittency problems. We definitely need to get rid of coal and oil. And I also personally am quite a proponent of nuclear. I really think that nuclear is very important in the energy mix, because it is, the only sort of like 24/7 energy source that we can use. And it's also a very important source of heat, which, for example, for steel manufacturing, there is no alternative to fossil fuels for steel manufacturing other than nuclear. So I'm quite a proponent of nuclear as well. So I think ultimately we need to have a strong energy mix of different sources of energy. And at the same time, we need to build technologies or improve batteries so that we increase the storage capacity, but it will always remain a bit of a mix. And what we will hopefully see is that energy becomes extremely cheap, because renewable energy can, it definitely, we're already almost at cost parity in Europe. So the cost of renewable energy is almost at par with fossil fuels. And within a couple of years, we will be below it. I think not yet in Asia, but that opens up a massive opportunity, I think. It's.
I mean, most of Asia, renewable energy new plant is cheaper than coal. It's well established. And I think the Bill Gates book that you're mentioning, you're coming top down, but if you're looking at a bottom up as well, so average electricity consumption is 10 to 15 kilowatt hour. I think Australian average is about 20 kilowatt hour per day. And your battery, electric car will have a 30 to 70 kilowatt hour batteries. And to store 20 kilowatt hour, your house is nothing. So I don't buy that view that too, if you don't have sun 3 days and the whole country needs, because there will be a lot of micro storage. Like if you ask somebody how many cameras you have, people run out of their fingers to count how many cameras, because the camera becomes so cheap. Your mobile phone has 3, your pen has, this has, that has, right? When I was little, camera was a family asset. You buy an SLR that people borrows from you, right? As things become cheap, right? I'm sitting in my room. I think, I don't know how many things has batteries in it already, right?
I think that's a super interesting idea, that you could leverage, say, your car battery to store home electricity. I think that's indeed building microgrids that way. I think that's a tremendously interesting idea. Yeah,
microgrid, off-grid, because I think Australia already we have the highest penetration of solar per capita. And even last year, 2.6 gigawatt got added, 2,600 megawatt despite COVID. And now batteries are coming into homes. Almost every homes will have a battery within 5 years out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the cost will start to drop dramatically. And so, no, I think batteries will I mean, there we're going to see a lot of innovation there. It's more at industrial scale that, for example, how do you keep a factory afloat and with intermittency, I think, or say hospitals, for example. Well, also there you can leverage.
Intermittency is no longer a problem. You just, I mean, look at what's happening in like at the Hornsdale Power. There's a power station in South Australia, which has been competing with gas plants for the last 2 years. And right now, there's so many super large scale batteries that's coming in online in Australia. So it's like the city's water supply, right? As soon as you have a tank, you don't really worry about, you do worry about long-term drought, but on a daily basis, if there is no rain, you have no problem because there's tremendous amount of storage, right?
For sure, yeah. So how do you see the transition towards renewable energy in the Philippines? And what do you are the key sort of challenges along the way?
I mean, Philippines specifically, I think Philippines is different. Philippines may be the only country in the region where the whole energy sector is in the private hands, because the energy law of which was passed in 2002. So Philippines has all the renewable energy incentives there, but unfortunately, rooftop solar hasn't happened because the Philippines, the feed-in tariff was very much targeted to large installations, so you needed to be 400 kilowatt or bigger. So globally, if anybody producing electricity on their roof got a feed-in tariff subsidy, Philippines, you only got it if you put into the grid. So Philippines is a very interesting case because the tariff is so expensive. I think we pay almost 10 pesos a kilowatt hour, which is in the 20 plus cents a kilowatt hour. Much more expensive than anywhere in the region. Like we mentioned, Kyrgyzstan is at 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So Philippines having 10 times more tariff, still renewable energy has not taken up that much. I think there's
and that of course has quite some political aspects to it, right?
I mean, yes and no, because there's a wholesale electricity market established. So you can very easily be able to see how much I pay if I want to be a part of the grid. But somehow rooftop solar hasn't happened the way one would have expected because it's
such a sunny country. Yes. Yeah. What is needed to change that in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I used to work in the Philippines almost 10 years ago. Now I don't cover anymore, but I think there is a little bit of dependency on people on getting incentives, and large scale players, of course, like Meralco's of the world, who's the distribution company. People will wait for them to take initiatives. But if you are Meralco, a distribution company, like anywhere in the world, you have no incentive to erode into your own customer base by creating competing generation. So yeah, Philippines, I think it's a market failure in a way. Like energy efficiency, same thing. People say, oh, if your tariff is high, you will be energy efficient. I said, look, in the Philippines, right? Tariff is so high, people's ability to buy and consume energy is not really, people are not that rich in general, but still, this is not the most energy efficient country in the world. I mean, there are a lot of work has been done. So yeah, I don't know, market failure. We hide behind that word.
Yeah.
There are a lot of opportunities for small startup. I know a lot of young entrepreneurs doing, but they're still trying to do smaller scale project, but no one is coming up with a large solar or a battery project targeting to retail customers. They're going into to be in the market, wholesale market, doing 50 megawatt, 100 megawatt range.
Yeah, interesting.
So if you have any interest, we can have a long discussion on that. I know a few people who would like to talk to you about that.
Yeah, definitely. At a certain point, I definitely want to come back to the Philippines and build an impact business there and do something about climate change in the Philippines. It's such an interesting market. My heart is very much in the Philippines.
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, but yeah, in due time.
Yeah. I mean, Philippines, in the whole Southeast Asia region, there is a huge opportunity, and also Indonesia has so much coal, and Indonesia right on the equator, so sun is the brightest,
Yeah,
the strongest. So there are a lot of
exactly.
opportunities, and
Yes.
Philippines had lot of government support right now. What I hear about converting into electric jeepneys and others, but still a lot of work needs to be done somehow. So if you
Yeah.
want to come into Asia, I think there's a huge opportunity anywhere.
Yes. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So what's your sort of how do you encourage a young entrepreneur, say in the Philippines or anywhere in Southeast Asia, who wants to get in? What should they do? What should they study?
Oh, I think studies. Well, what's interesting, I think, in the past decades, to be successful, you needed to study business or finance, right? And that was during the time when everybody wanted to work in banking or consultancy. And then came the age of the programmer in the past 10 years, where as a programmer, you make a whole lot of money because, and that's where the scarcity is in the market. But the coming 10, 20 years, I think you should be studying biology or
Mhm,
chemistry
mhm,
or engineering. I think this is where the innovation will really take place. So there's a massive amount of sort of, demand from startups, for example, for chemists or biologists who can invent new types of batteries, who can invent cement, for example, which doesn't emit carbon, who can
mhm.
invent new ways of manufacturing steel. So I think there will be a huge demand for those sort of more scientific type of roles. Um, and if you want to get started as an entrepreneur, well, my recommendation is first to find a team. I think
Mhm.
that's step one. It's very, very difficult to start a business by yourself. So, like, look for somebody with complementary skills or a few people with complementary skills. And what has always worked for me really well is to just share my ideas. I share my business ideas with anybody. I'm very open about it. I'm not afraid that people will run away with my idea. And when you
Mhm.
start sharing your idea, what happens then is something magical because people will start to resonate. So people will give you feedback. You will get a
Mhm.
feeling of whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. And people will also start to say, oh, that's great, I believe in that, how can I participate, how can I help you with that? And that's where everything starts. So you start by building a team, and then secondly, network is very important in building a business successfully. So I always encourage people to reach out to experts in the field, people who have experience, people like you, or whoever has the expertise that you need to build a successful business, and to reach out to them and to ask them for their advice, not necessarily for their investment, but I would love to get your feedback on my business idea. And
Mhm.
then when people who have influence and capabilities and are in a position of power and they like your idea, they will also be willing to support you either by investing in your company or by connecting you to other people. And so this is, I think, very much, putting your idea out there, reaching out to people for help is a good way to get started. And ultimately, you just need to just do it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I think we need to bring you as a speaker to one of our energy forums that we do every year.
Happy to.
Now, that's very important to, okay, let me connect and find out. Are you aware of the Asia Clean Energy Forum that Asian Development Bank does every year?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's in June. I think this year, let me find out. I think, yeah, we should try to bring you as a speaker somewhere. That's
Amazing.
fantastic. So what's your vision going forward on your company? When do you think you will be coming to Asia?
I hope in 3 years' time. So we will first, set up a first product, the first venture capital VC fund of funds in Europe, and then in 3 years' time, I think it would be very interesting to start, operating from, say, Singapore, because there's a huge capital market. I think there are a lot of, There's a lot of capital sitting in Asia, in all layers, especially you've got quite some high net worth individuals, but also younger millennials who are much more engaged with climate change and who are much more focused on having impact with their capital. And that's our target market. So, and then I think a lot of innovation is happening in Asia as well. So I think it will be very interesting to find, the leading Asian climate funds that are either investing in renewable energy infrastructure or in technology, or that are scaling technology. So we'll be looking to invest in Asian funds through our fund of funds through our platform as well. So yeah, give me 3 to 5 years. So
Oh, fantastic. That's very good. Is there anything else that I could have asked? I've asked a lot of questions, but I'm just thinking you are really fascinating person. I should have prepared a bit more to understand your thinking. I like that energy that you bring in a conversation. I think the future needs people like you a bit more.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. No, I think, I mean, what we want to do with carbon equity is very ambitious and complex, and it will need a long time. But we've got time, or at least we don't have time. I mean, we need to invest as much as possible and really, making a massive effort to invest in renewable energy and in clean tech as soon as possible. But yeah, I think what you're doing and what we're doing is spreading the word and also building some level of awareness and building enthusiasm. We're talking about an opportunity, and the vision of us living in a clean world where we are not covered in smog of cars, where we get our energy from clean sources which are renewable, which are circular, where we are not depleting the world's resources, but we're in balance, then I think that's a beautiful world vision that we should all aspire to. And I think the question for everybody is, how can I leverage my talents, my network, my resources to help and be part of that, of that sort of revolution, if you will. So I want to build enthusiasm for this movement and get people involved. And so I hope I can, play my part and make a small contribution there.
I think enthusiasm is very important because the world has changed so much. You mentioned earlier that you grew up in Melbourne, right? My first job as an engineer, I remember in the State Electricity Commission of Victoria,
Yes.
Hazelwood Power Station, and that is the oldest coal-fired power station which shut down a few years back. And Elon, was shut down last month. I remember going there as an intern, or the sort of induction rather, and someone said, this is what you need to know. This is our future. This is Victoria is. Now, those power stations are getting shut down. People are putting the same place solar. It's unbelievable, unthinkable. That has happened in 30 odd years. Exactly. No one would have ever believed. So 30 years down the track, I'm sure we hope that we'll be in a very different world than what we are in now.
Yes, exactly. And it's inevitable. It is inevitable that the world is moving in that direction. And so also for companies like Meralco, you can try to sort of, stop the transition all you want, but you're not going to be able to, because this is the direction in which the world is heading. So rather than, trying to slow things down at the moment, at the expense of the public interest, to maximize your current profits now, I think we should all be thinking and building for the world of 2050 or the world beyond that. What does the world look like then, and how can we prepare for that? And what can we do today to start doing that? We shouldn't be looking short term or trying to optimize for today. We should really be living, 30 years ahead. What can we do to be prepared for that day? And how can we be winning as a company? Not today, but in 30 years, how can we still be relevant then? And then, if we start thinking like that, I think we can really hit the gas pedal on innovation and really start. There's such an opportunity for companies like Meralco to have such a big impact by really taking leadership here. Even if it comes at a short-term expense of their position, they will be winning if they take the lead. And I wish every company could start to think like that.
I mean, that's happening, that will slowly, because no shareholder wants to lose money.
No.
And that risk, that stranded asset risk is changing those psyche. But one other interesting thing happened. Last episode, I think I recorded with an old classmate of mine, Rajat Sarawat. He's a senior executive in the Western Australian Regulatory Office, and he was discussing how the regulatory psyche is changing, because what happens if you build a gas pipeline or something that becomes stranded, why should the taxpayer pay for it? There is a chance in future regulator might come in and take it out of the asset base. So you as a regulatory entity don't just think anything I build, I'll get my cost of capital return on this. You might not.
Exactly.
So I think that thinking will change as more and people are getting out of the grid, going their own. So
yes, totally agree with that. Yeah.
So I think the companies have to be very wary of, because I just bought a car and I'm sure this is my last internal combustion engine car that I will buy. The next car will be electric. I won't be in the Philippines, I'll go back home, but I'm sure even in the Philippines, somebody buying a car today will be saying this is maybe the last car that is gasoline cars, no?
Yeah, exactly. Or better yet, they buy an electric car today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The next car will be electric, the way the world is headed right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. And the energy that you bring in the discussion.
No, it was great talking to you, and thanks for doing this. I love that you are spreading the word and thinking about energy transition and how we can all play a part. So I really strongly support that.
Yeah. So how can people find you? I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to invest and a lot of people who want money. They are startup people.
They can go to carbonequity.com. Still a very basic website, but you will find some information there. And anyway, I'm currently still replying to every email that comes in through our website, so you will get a personal note from me. Or you can connect with me through LinkedIn, of course.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Most welcome. Pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah,
bye.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our show. Also, leave your comments and review if you enjoyed today's episode. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at shasni for updates. That's SHASNIE. Once again, this has been Energypreneurs, connecting you to the innovative opportunities in solar power, batteries, and electric vehicles. Stay tuned.